exhausted? I'm tired after watching that, but I love that idea. And here's the thing, you will hear about that concept, this idea of the power of the mind everywhere you go. And so sometimes it feels weird when you've heard about these things in your workplace or you've been reading about the internet and then you come to church and you're like, you're going to talk about it here. Here's the little secret. They all stole it from God. They stole the idea of the power of the mind from God. And that's what this series is kind of all about, is helping remind us that God made this thing rattling around up in your skull, and He knows how it works, and He understands what you are capable of if you and I can be set free from the strongholds that keep us hostage in a lot of ways. And so we're in week 2 of that series today, and I want to talk about, for the next few minutes, the idea of disciplining or training our mind. And here's where I want to begin. I believe that I have a rational mind, right? I'm relatively normal in that I can think things through and put A and B together and come up with a plan and all of those sorts of things. But what I've learned is that sometimes my rational mind makes very emotional decisions. Have you ever been there? I can come up with a very logical, it all makes sense, and the result is going to prove true kind of plan, and then blow it up because I'm feeling something. I'll give you an example. Over the Christmas season, my wife came home from some kind of get-together with a plate full of Christmas cookies. And for about 18 months, I've been trying to get on the health train and watch what I'm eating and all of those kinds of things. And for a day or so, this plate of cookies sat on the counter in our kitchen, and I looked at it, and I just kept saying, "Get behind me, Satan. I'm not gonna eat these cookies." But they just kind of keep coming back, and I kept telling myself, my rational self, these are not good, too many calories, too much fat, too much sugar, blah, blah, blah. But then one day I had a bad day, and I was feeling something entirely different. And what happened was a war was waged in my mind, and the rational side of me was saying, don't eat them. The feeling side of me was saying, eat them all. And so I came up with this plan. Instead of eating 1 entire cookie or 3 entire cookies, I can't even believe I'm telling you this story. I decided to take 1 bite out of every cookie. It makes sense. The problem is, after you take 1 bite out of every cookie, nobody else wants those cookies anymore, so I threw the rest away. You're having the reaction that my wife had. I got in a little bit of trouble for that plan. And I realized in that moment that what had happened was my emotional brain took over for my rational brain. I needed something to make me feel better, no matter how little sense it seemed to make in that moment. And you've been there too, right? You've made some health promise to yourself, and you did it great for 2 days, and then you went into the office or into the teacher's lounge or wherever it is that you do a lot of your life, and there were donuts in the middle of the room. And you thought, I'll just have 2. And then you ate 2, and you thought, well, now that I've had 2, I might as well have 6, right? Even though it doesn't make sense, we still convince ourselves we should. Or you decided this year is going to be my financial freedom year, and you came up with a budget and a plan of how you were going to cancel all your debt out. You took financial peace for the 3rd time, right? And you lived it until yesterday. Because something happened in life where it just seemed like the train was going to come off the tracks, and you just had to go buy a pair of shoes. And then when you're out, you go, well, I got to get an outfit to go with these pairs of shoes, right? This is how it happens. Or there's the rational side of us that says, I should apologize for that thing that I said. But our emotional self takes over, and we hold back because of how that would make us feel or how that would make us look. This is why we say the mind is a battlefield. It's because you have all of these neural pathways in your brain, all of these wires that make up the gray matter, and they are crossed. You have crossed wires in your brain. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That just means you're normal. And these pathways are bumping into each other. And you've got one part of you that thinks a certain way and another part of you thinks a different way. And the more you think the one thought, the deeper that path gets and the easier it becomes to think that thought again the next time you're thinking. And it can be very frustrating. In some ways, though, that sounds like good news, because if you're always thinking good thoughts, then it's great that your brain will naturally think more good thoughts. The problem is if you drift towards bad thinking and negativity and all those kinds of things, that becomes your natural response. And nobody understood this better than a guy named Paul. If anybody had an excuse to be held captive to mental strongholds, it would have been Paul. Think about this. He had given his life to the cause, to the way of Jesus. And he was traveling all over the place, starting in synagogues with the Jews and then moving on to all of the other people and telling them about who Jesus was. And do you know what their response was? They threw rocks at him. They literally tried to kill him. And over and over and over again, things went wrong. If anybody could have started having negative thoughts and gone, this is not worth it, this is not how my life was going to turn out, I'm so discouraged, I'm so beat up, it was Paul. In fact, a good share of the letters that he wrote that make up our New Testament, what we call the New Testament, he wrote them from an actual stronghold. He was literally in prison, behind bars, for what he believed. And I want to look at one of those letters. We call it Philippians. It's written to Christians in a town called Philippi. And what's amazing is when you come to the end of his letter, it is not filled with, pray for me, brothers and sisters, because my life has not turned out great. It's not, I'm really worried that we're going to lose the fight. It's not, poor me. What Paul does instead is encourage everybody else despite. So something had happened in him. Something had happened in the way he thought, in the way he saw, in the way he moved through those things in his life. And I believe what he discovered was that we do have the ability to change the way we think. And when we change the way we think, we change our lives. And so I want to show you the end of the letter. I recommend you read the entire letter, but this is kind of how he starts to bring it to a close. He says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, let me say one more thing as I close this letter. In other words, this is the conclusion, this is the wrap-up, this is the final say. You always save the biggest thing for the end, right? This is why when people are coming close to death, we'll ask them, do you have any final words? Do you have anything that you want to say? Do you want to leave us with, right? Paul's coming to the end of his letter. He understands he may not have another chance to say anything to the Philippian people. And he says, listen, this is the one thing that I want to make sure you get. If you ignore the rest of the letter, make sure you get these next few sentences. And he starts those sentences with these words, fix your thoughts. And it would be easy to interpret that as get them repaired, right? Fix your thoughts like fix your car. But he's talking about something entirely different, to fixate. And what that doesn't mean is keep in mind. What Paul is not saying is, hey, keep in mind what I'm about to tell you. No, what he's talking about is an obsessive attachment. Like, you can't get off what we're about to talk about. You should lock in like a tractor beam on these next few things. Become obsessively attached to the following ideas. It's easy to read through this and just kind of passively go, these are good, these are positive, these are warm and fuzzy. But let's get to the meat, let's get to the deep, let's get to the hard stuff. And Paul would say, if there's one thing you're going to get, it's fixate on these things. Become obsessively attached to these things. And I'm going to tell you what those things are in a minute because you're starting to go, okay, well, what do we do? Some translations here actually use the word meditate, which I know seems very foreign. To some of us in the church world, that seems very Eastern religion kind of thing, and we're not that, right? But the idea of being, fill your mind with the following. Fixate on these things. Sometimes we think of meditate as empty your mind, and some days I do just need to empty my brain. But what Paul is talking about is actually fill your brain with these things. Think about these things. Change what your brain does. But what are those? Now, I want to use that word, a similar word, in a different language that we find it in the Old Testament. Because David actually talked about meditating an awful lot, and I want to give you two examples as to what he meditated on. So you got to go to the Psalms for that. Start in Psalm 119. He says, I will meditate on your precepts, precepts just being a principle, sometimes a rule. I will meditate on your precepts and fix my eyes on your ways. Here's my translation. They would say, you need to meditate on the things that God wants for you. Here's a little secret about God's rules or commandments or precepts or principles, whatever word you want to give it. Anytime he gives us one of those where he says, this is how you should live your life, it is for your benefit. It's not like when my dad or your mom or my mom would give us a rule just because they were our parents and that's what they were supposed to do, right? You remember those days where you're like, why do I have to do that? Because I said so. And we sometimes think that's what God does. You got to do this just because I said so, and I just like exercising my authority. God's a loving Father, and he gives us these things to protect us and to get us to the life that he would want for us. So the argument here would be fixate on the things that God wants for you and for your life. In a different psalm, Psalm 143, he says this, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. So not just meditating on what you want for me, I'm also going to meditate on what you've done for me. What would it look like if you and I, for a little bit every single day, paused to fix our thoughts on all that God had done for us? Just in the last 24 hours. Let alone over the course of our whole life. I love the song that we just learned together because it speaks to that end. When I think about this life that you've given me, God, you've been faithful to the end. You've been faithful all along. Have there been bumps? Yes. Have there been bruises? Absolutely. But you have been consistent. So the argument here is fix your thoughts, meditate on, focus on, become obsessively attached to what God wants for you and what God's done for you. It's a totally different way of thinking. Now, here's my overly simplified definition of meditation. It's exercising your mind or exercising your brain. And this is why that video at the beginning starts to tie in. Because when we think of exercise, we think of physical exercise. And it's why we watch something like that and go, I need a nap. Because that's just a lot of work. Mental exercise is a lot of work. Choosing to think about something over what we might naturally think about or most easily think about is going to be exhausting. One of the reasons we don't slow down long enough to reflect on what God has done for us or focus on what God wants for us is because it's not easy. And we'll just naturally drift to other things. Now, what Paul's going to say in just a minute when we go back to Philippians is that there is a tie between the things that you and I think about regularly and the things that you and I do regularly. I'd go so far as to say this. If you don't control what you think, you'll never control what you do. If you don't control what you think, you'll never control what you do. And this is so important to me because I've learned this the hard way. For so long, I've wanted to just get my behavior straight. I've just wanted to get the rules obeyed, right? Check the list, do the good things so that I get a passing grade. And I never slowed down long enough to think about what I think about and realize that my brain actually is the oomph behind everything that I do. And what would I do? And you should wrestle with this. What would you do if what your brain was fixated on was what God wants for you and has done for you? You might have a different attitude. You might have a different outlook. You might make some different decisions. You see, it doesn't take long to realize that our patterns, the neural pathways that our brain affect the pathways that we walk in our lives. And Paul draws our attention back to that. And then in the next sentence, he gives us one of the most amazing lists. And these are the things that Paul would say that you and I should become obsessively attached to. Are you ready? Here we go. Fix your thoughts on what's true and honorable and right. Think about things that are pure and lovely and admirable. Now, last week we talked about your life will head in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Wouldn't it be amazing if your life and my life headed in that direction? If my life was heading in the direction of what's honorable and right, what's lovely and good? You could line all 7 billion people in the world up, and you could go one by one and ask them, if you could have a life that was headed in this direction every day, would you want it? I can guarantee you'd get 100% yes. This is what we all want. And the good news is Paul says, this is what you should fixate on. This is what you should focus on. This is what you should think about more than anything else. The problem is, and this is why it becomes exhausting, you and I think most about fear. I'm going to make the argument that most of our actions and most of our thoughts, our worry, our anxiety, our loneliness, our inferiority, all of those things come from some deep down fear in us. That's just our gut reaction to everything. And that becomes that stronghold that we talked about. And we don't step out, we don't reach out, we don't make connections with other people, we don't take the chance because we're just held back. But love casts out all fear, is what the scriptures tell us. And so God calls you into this entirely different way of living your life. And remember, we're not even talking about what you do in your life at this point. We're just talking about how you think in your life. And you know who you talk to more than anybody else in this world? You. You have more conversations in a day with yourself than you do anybody else. And wouldn't it be interesting if for just a minute, because this would be scary, so we wouldn't want to do it too long, if just for a minute we could see the thought bubbles above all our heads? Like in this room, if all of a sudden God just gave us the eyes to see, bloop, then, like it just pop up and you could see what I'm thinking about or what you're thinking about. Some of us, we wouldn't even hesitate to say, well, I'm thinking about this thing that I'm worried about because I'm afraid that it's not going to work out. And even though we're sitting here and I'm talking to you and I'm trying to draw your attention to another idea, your brain is thinking about something else. And more often than not, it's negative. Right? I only know that because that's me. Now, it would be easy to listen to last week, and if you didn't, go back on the website and listen back to last week, and then come to this week and go, oh, this is like a power of positive thinking kind of message and series, right? And I've heard that a dozen times. I don't even need to go to church to hear that. I can just look that up on YouTube. I want to change how we think about that, because I'm not talking about the power of positive thinking. What I'm talking about is the fruit of a fixed mind. Leave power of positive thinking off to the side. We are talking about the fruit. What happens? What is the result of a mind that is fixed on the things that Paul lists out? A mind that is fixed on the things that the Psalms call us to be fixated on. This is the result of a life that has been transformed by the renewing of the mind. And this is important because my brain is not focused. My brain is not fixed. And here's what I know. An unfocused mind doesn't naturally drift towards truth. A mind that's just left to wander, your mind, will naturally drift towards untruth and lies or perversions of the truth. I don't know why God let our brains work that way, but He did. So we have to discipline ourselves. We have to rewire our brain on purpose. This cannot just be left up to the warm fuzzies that love to sit and talk about their feelings and all of that kind of stuff. Each of us, as followers of Jesus, or people that are exploring following Jesus, we need to, what Paul would say, we need to wrestle down our thoughts and hold them captive. Because it is the start of a change. It's the start of a change. And if you want to change what's happening tangibly in your life, what you're doing with your life, then you need to change how you're thinking in your life. And in the next sentence, Paul kind of takes that transition, and you've got to notice the progression here. He starts off by talking about what we think, and it's only now that he moves towards what we do. And so in verse 9, Paul says this, "Keep putting into practice all you learned from me and heard from me and saw me doing, and the God of peace will be with you." So here's how it goes. Work on what you're thinking about. That will affect what you're doing. And what you're doing, the result of that will be peace. And so often what we do is we forget the first step. We just work on behavior modification because we want the peace, we want the result, we want the presence of God in our lives. And we think, because we get it all twisted, that we've got to perform in a certain way in order to earn that. But the prevailing message of the gospel is you can't earn it. You didn't earn it. It is a gift. And the only way you actually get to it is to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Because everything comes from that place. So Paul says, fix on these things and then put them into practice. In other words, meditate on them long enough where they start to affect what you do. But start at square one. So for the last 18 months, I've learned this in that I wanted to run 3 miles without stopping. Because I'm one of those people that if I tell you I went out for a run and I walked at all, I feel guilty about telling you I went out for a run. I want to tell you like I went out for a walk run or whatever you would call that, right? A jog. I don't know what you call it when you're not running the whole time. So in my mind, if people ask me what am I doing for exercise, I want to be able to say I run 3 miles a day. And I run all 3 miles. And so I started on this journey about 18 months ago, and I just started running, and you know what I learned? I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't even get 1 mile without having to walk. In fact, I couldn't even go 2 minutes before I needed to walk. And the more I tried, and I would just try, and I would tell myself, you're going to do this, but then this other part of my brain would fire off where it would go, no, you're not. Because you're a big guy, and big guys are not runners. Right? You're going to fail. That's what would go through my head all of the time. And then I'd start justifying all of the excuses why it was okay that I wasn't going to meet that goal. And what amazingly I learned was I had to start saying, I run 3 miles a day. Not I'm going to try, not one day I will. I run 3 miles a day. And when I started to make that shift in my thinking, I started running 3 miles a day, not stopping. And again, this is not, hey, it's just, if you will it in, it's going to happen. That's not how it works at all. But what I learned is this has an impact on this. And your brain has an impact on everything else. And what I learned is that sometimes we think of limitations as an end, but limitations are not always an end. Sometimes they're a start that prevents a different end. And our thinking is that. Your limitations in life, whether it's physical limitations, financial limitations, relational limitations, we think that that's some end, and once we reach it, we've hit the lid, we've hit the finish line, and it's over, and we can't go any further. But your brain is a limitation at the starting line that sends you off in the wrong direction, and you might finish something, but it's the wrong something because your brain didn't allow you to head in the direction that you should have or that you wanted to. And some of us, when it comes to this, the thinking that's got us on the wrong path, that has us heading in the wrong direction, is that we don't understand God's love for us. We don't understand God's desire for us. So I want to give you a little spoiler about this. The God of peace. Paul used that phrase about God over and over again, and he used it in a different letter that he wrote to Rome, and he said, this is what the God of peace is going to do. The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. In other words, the God of peace will bring victory. The God of peace will allow you to overcome. But do not miss where this starts. Because what happens is you might go to a church service like this, and somebody like me is trying to rile you up and get you excited that God wants something for you, and you're just going to go out and get it, and by Tuesday you're going to be defeated, and you're going to feel like, I did all the things I was supposed to do, except this part, where you actually started to believe that, where you actually started to think in those terms. And friends, if you don't control your thinking, you'll never control what you do. For some of us, the addictions in our life, they don't even have to be chemical addictions. Whether it could be food, it could be pornography, it could be anything. Those addictions, the reason we feel like we can't control them, and I understand there can be some dependency issues and all that, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that this is like anything hard in your life, you just snap your finger and do it. But we have to change the thinking that we'll never overcome this. Start here, you won't ever overcome it. But the God of peace will. So be transformed by the renewing of your mind, think differently, which will change what you do, and you will experience the peace of God. So here's how I think you should put this into practice this week. It's how I'm putting it into practice this week. You can choose to ignore it, but I think it might be helpful. Last Sunday, I encouraged you to identify your number one stronghold, the thinking that has you captive. And I said you should then go into the scriptures and find the truth that demolishes that stronghold. Remember, that's what Paul said. That God gives us the ability, the power to demolish these strongholds, the human reasoning and thinking. So what I want you to do this week is to write it down, to actually put that down on paper, the truth. Write that thing down. And you might have a list of those things. So it could be 1, 2, 10, 25, as many as you need, because you've identified the things that are not God-honoring in your brain, and you've decided these are the truths that are going to demolish that thing, and I just need to declare them. And that's the second step this week. Write them down, then declare them. And here's how you're going to do this, and this is going to feel weird and funny, but trust me. You're going to declare them out loud. Because science has shown us the things we do out loud or the things we handwrite over and over again stick. I don't know why that is. It's why I usually will preach this message to the wall before I ever preach it to you. It's why a lot of times I will handwrite my notes back out on Sunday morning, so I'm just drilling them into my brain. It works. I don't know how it works, but it does. So I'm encouraging you to take your list of 1 to 25 things or however many you've got and read them out loud every single day for the next week. And this is going to feel funny, like I said, so you might want to find a secluded place, get in your car and drive to a parking lot. People will just think you're talking on your phone. It's totally cool. We live in the 21st century now. We're blessed. Your kids might just think you're talking to somebody on the phone in the other room. So read them out loud, and you might do it once in the morning, and you might do it once in the evening. And what you're going to start to see happen is you're going to rewire your brain, and eventually you'll believe it. You'll teach yourself something new. You will reshape it. And again, I'll come back to it will be uncomfortable, but that's what rewiring your brain feels like. It's uncomfortable. Transformation is uncomfortable. But if we don't get this, we're never gonna get it. So, to help illustrate this, I was reading about, because I want to learn a language other than my own. And I'd love to learn Spanish, and I want to be able to actually speak Spanish, not know a few words like baño, or and get to the bathroom. I want to know how to have a conversation in Spanish, and so I've been looking into what that would look like, and I read an amazing thing. They say you don't actually know a language, you're not fluent in a language until you think in that language. So I'll give you an example. This phrase, más amor por favor, means more love, please. Now here's what happens for any of us that know a few Spanish words, and most of us would know por favor, and we might know amor and those things. And here's what you did. You saw the Spanish phrase, you translated it into English in your brain, and you went, that's more love, please. And then if you were to say it back to somebody, you would retranslate it back into Spanish. And so there's this whole kind of process that has to happen in your brain. But people that are fluent in Spanish think in that. They don't translate it into English ever because their brain has been reshaped. And you might go, that is impossible to learn how to do that. But you've already done it. Did you know by the time you're 2 years old, you've done the most complicated, difficult task any human could ever do and learned a language? Because when you were born, you didn't speak English. Or if you're a native Spanish speaker, you didn't speak Spanish. You learned the language. You put all those words to all the shapes and all of the ideas, and you did that by the time you were 2. So you can do it. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's exactly what we're talking about when it comes to our spiritual lives. You have to learn a new spiritual language. You have to start thinking in that language, not just being able to recite some verses, not just be able to remember the message that you heard at church, but this has to permeate your brain. Because if you don't control your thinking, you'll never control what you do. If you don't control your thinking, you'll never control what you do. So yes, we are talking about a difficult task. But when Paul says, fix your thoughts, and I'm going to wrap up my letter, this is the conclusion, this is the big finale, make sure you hear this. Fix your thoughts on things that are lovely and right and pure and true. Speak that language. And everything will change. Because you're transformed, Paul said, by the renewing of your mind. The reality is, you and I have been given a get-out-of-jail-free card, a break from the strongholds that hold us back. When Jesus did what he did for us, he opened the door. And most of us still sit in the cell unnecessarily because we can't think about what's outside there. About 6-7 years ago, when I was still a youth pastor, we used to play this game. One of my dear friends was one of our volunteers with the student ministries, and he was a good sport. And we used to play this game called Find Gil. And Gil, we would get all the students in one room, and we would send Gil off into the building, and he would hide somewhere. And the goal was to get as many of your teammates hiding with Gil by the end of the time. So if you've ever played sardines, is our version of that. And there was this one time in particular that Gil found such a good hiding spot that nobody could find him. You know where he was hiding? Right under my feet. He had crawled up under the stage and he was hiding in here, and none of the students found him. And they're all walking around, and they're high school kids, so they're like, man, this game is stupid. I can't find him anywhere, right? They're giving me all kinds of attitude. And so we decided to stop the game and it was like, wow, Gil wins this round. We just never told Gil. And that poor guy was hunkered down under this platform for 90 minutes. He never came out. Now, he could have come out because the game was over. But he was still thinking the game was on. And so even though it would have been fine for him to walk out, he stayed right where he was. The game's over. You can change your thinking about your life. And I understand some of us are dealing with some extremely hard things. I don't want to be flippant about that. And some of us right now, we're staying in that stronghold because it's all we got, and I get that. But for some of the rest of us, it's stuff that you've been holding on to for so long, and Jesus says you can be transformed. You can come out of there. You don't have to live there anymore. So walk out. Change the way you think. And if you're here this morning and you're going, this is new. I thought church was all about, good attendance, giving a few dollars here and there, a bunch of stuff I don't want to do. I thought that's what church was. And you're here going, wow, Jesus actually cares about my mental life, my all that's going on up there. And this is clicking for you, and you're going, wow, this is different. No matter what your opinion is of Jesus, I think we all agree he changed things. He made the world different, right? What if he wants to make you different? What if this is step one for you, changing the way you think? See, Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except me. If you've seen me, if you know me, then you know God. And sometimes that's meant to be very exclusive sounding. I think it's very inclusive because he invited everybody, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. He says, I can renew the way you think. I can help you fix your thoughts on these things too. Follow me. And he goes, is it really that easy? Well, Jesus himself said, believe in your heart, confess with your mouth. That's what Paul said. Believe in your heart, confess with your mouth. That Jesus is Lord and that God rose him from the dead, and you will be saved. Change the way you think about Jesus. And Jesus will change the way you think about everything. And so if you're here this morning and you're at a place where you're ready to make that kind of decision, I'm going to ask you to do something really, really simple. Don't worry, it's not raise your hand. It's not give us, come forward or anything like that. I'm just going to ask you to pull out your phone. And we'll be singing in a minute. You can do this while we're singing. And I'm just going to encourage you to text the word freedom to this number, 847-558-1996. And we're going to reply right away because we want to walk on this journey with you. We want to help you identify what do I do now? I've made this decision. I believe it. I don't get it all, but I believe it, and I'm telling you, I'm believing it. We want to help you with what is next after that moment. And so you can take the time. We got a few minutes left. But here's how I want to end our time together, and I hope this would be helpful to you, encouraging to you. I'm going to invite the band to actually come out. And we're going to sing a song together in a minute, and the words are so powerful. I'm going to see a victory. And they go back to the God of peace is going to crush our enemy under our feet kind of thinking. But how I want to lead us into that song is give you an example of what daily declarations could sound like for you. And I'm going to speak these over you. And in a lot of ways, they're my prayer for you. And I hope that you'll hold on to them and that they'll start to become the things that you think about more than other things. And eventually you'll see life change in your every single day. And so I'm going to read these for you, and then we're going to sing this song together. But I would love it if you would stand as I read these over you. You are strong and mighty. You have the same power that raised Jesus from the dead dwelling inside of you. You are not your past. You are not what you did. You are who God says you are. He says you are forgiven. He says you are redeemed. He says you are free. You are not hostage to your unhealthy thoughts. The weapons you fight with are not the weapons of this world. You have divine power to demolish strongholds. You have the mind of Jesus directing your thoughts. You have the Word of God guiding your steps. Worry is not your master. You trust in God. His peace guards your heart, guards your mind, and guards your soul in Jesus. Your God has not given you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. You are chosen. You are the masterpiece of God, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for you to do. Your God is with you. Your God is for you. Nothing can separate you from God's love. Not death, not demons, not the present or the past. No power on earth will ever separate you from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus, our Lord.